So we live a box life, a cage life. You wake up in your house box every single day. You might check your fluorescent phone box in the morning for the New York Times puzzle, or check your email notifications or Instagram. You might leave your house box to go into your vehicle box, which is your car. From your vehicle box, you stay in these rectangles on the ground, and then you go on these rectangles in the ground into your work box, which then you have to stare at a different, bigger fluorescent box in your box office, your cubicle. And all we do is move from box through box in our life. We live a box life. And that's the reality of our human experience right now. You are born, you go to your school box, and then after you go to your school box, you are trained in that school box to go to your work box. You work from the ages of like 18 until about 65. You work every day, not every day, sorry. You work 40 hours a week, and let's be real, most of us are working more because it's not including all of the unpaid labor and unclaimed labor associated with home taking, whether it's laundry or cooking or, you know, all those little mundane tasks. You work, you're born, you work, and you die. That seems to be the human experience. And I've been like desperately clinging to this idea that humanity is better than this, because literally like the planet is dying and we're all working towards who the hell knows what. Capitalism is incompatible with the health and the vitality of the planet and also humanity right now. And so I'm clinging to this idea that humanity has been better. It has been better before. And I've been reading a lot of books about indigenous societies and communities from indigenous authors. I've been reading things like far back in history, picking these like really random groups like the Taino people, which is the indigenous populations of Puerto Rico, reading about the indigenous peoples of North America and the Great Lakes region, you know, listening to Braiding Sweetgrass, indigenous people from Mexico, indigenous people from New Zealand, Aotearoa. I'm desperately clinging to this idea that humanity hasn't been this totally screwed up. And I know indigenous people aren't a monolith, but it really seems like a lot of the people understand that life was based off of human relationships and reciprocity and not jobs. Because our life right now is just based off of work, as if people are incapable of doing things that help others and contribute to the functioning of their society unless they're forced to and punished if they don't. Because if you don't work, you will be homeless, you won't have food, and you will die in this society. Even though a lot of people will do things that are work, they're just not monetized or valued in that way. So yeah, like I read books from indigenous authors, and I remember specifically reading a thesis on the native people of Puerto Rico, and I remember something in it was saying that the Taino people, and I'm probably butchering the name, but they only worked like a few hours every day. They only worked a few hours every single day, and they had like tons of like really well thought out games that they would entertain themselves with in their homes. And I think they also had like more fluid like marriage and relationship structures and stuff like that. And they invented the hammock. I'm gonna go fact check this right now because I've been telling a lot of people. What I'm trying to say is that people enjoyed their lives and they made the hammock and just relaxed. I mean, like seriously, like how happy do you have to be enjoying your life to make the hammock? Like literally, like that's such a, you have to be vibing so hard. And again, like no society is perfect. Like there's been tons of terrible societies in our history of like the world in general. But we live in cages right now, and people aren't fighting it enough because they aren't radicalized. Like I remember seeing that liberalism is, oh, this is really funny meme how saying like liberalism is just constantly discussing things in this like super polite way and saying that it's not actually as bad as it is until it actually is 10 times worse than it is. People need to start demanding a better life. Just staying with the status quo is not helping us. I was having a conversation with one of my old coworkers, and I was asking her, why aren't people doing something about the collapse of civilization, about the fact that people are getting killed everywhere? There's slavery across the world. There are children working in cobalt mines in South Sudan, like she was talking about. Like, why aren't people going crazy to fight everything that's happening? And I asked her this in the evolutionary perspective because I read an article on Substack the other day, which everyone should read more Substack and get off Instagram. It was talking about how ADHD has an evolutionary advantage because it makes you better at being a hunter and gatherer. Also, they tend to have like a later sleep cycle, so they would be awake when other people were asleep, which is good because that means that more people are awake and protecting like their own peoples and their own group and everything. And I just talked about how ADHD was an evolutionary advantage. And so if that is an evolutionary advantage, then what is the advantage of being ignorant and refusing to think or do anything? Then we started talking about also how like more intelligent people tend to be more depressed, which I have some complicated feelings about defining who is and isn't intelligent, because I'm not God and no one is, but there have been some studies that have said that people who are more intelligent are a lot more depressed, and they also have a better like reality check on what's going on. And when I asked her all these things, she essentially said that the evolutionary advantage towards people just being completely ignorant and shutting their eyes at everything is that they're not gonna wanna die. They can just move forward in life not thinking too hard about anything. It literally is ignorance is bliss. That is the evolutionary advantage. And I am imploring upon people to not go down that route, because ignorance is bliss, I feel like can go in two directions. Either you live in a society that's already like functioning pretty well, it's based off of reciprocity and relationships and compassion and sharing, and you don't have to think too hard about it because things are actually good. And then you live in other societies, like the US right now, where wealth hoarding is at complete extremes. Most people don't have enough money to live good lives. There's medical debt, student debt, people are getting side hustles on top of their jobs, people can't buy a home, and we're currently descending towards fascism right now. Like, that's what it is. And people who have that ignorance is bliss, I don't know if I'm gonna call it gene or trait, whatever it is, they don't see it, and they can just move forward and do nothing. And how beautiful and painful that is. And so I was talking to my girlfriend about this later, asking her how she became someone that could see through the rose-tinted glasses, who got rid of the rose-tinted glasses, even though she grew up in an environment where there very much were these rose-tinted glasses. And she simply said that she could smell out the bull. I don't know what YouTube's rules are against with swearing and stuff like that, but she just said that she could smell the bull crap. She could smell the bull crap from a very young age. And I was just thinking about that. Like, that makes so much sense from an evolutionary point of view. Like, some people can smell the bull crap and some people can't. So some people get to move through the world literally unable to smell the bull crap. They can't see it, they can't feel it, they can't taste it, they can't smell it. And there are other people who can smell the bull crap, and it's both a blessing and a curse, because they can see it and they can avoid it and they can tell other people to avoid it, but they also actually do see it and they have to smell it, and it's there in front of them and they have to do everything to avoid it, but it will always be there. And oh my god, it would be so nice to just never see any of it, never see any of it at all. Like, the people who don't contemplate why it's weird that we work so much that we do. Like, places in Iceland are reducing people to the 4-hour work week with the same amount of pay, because 40 hours of work a week is not a God-given number. I just would love to see humanity based off of reciprocity and compassionate and respectful human relationships, and not just jobs, because the world doesn't function because of jobs, it's relationships. Like, I would still be contributing to my community, and most people would still contribute to their community if there wasn't a job which had the threat of poverty and homelessness behind it. It's happened before in human history. It can happen again. The other thing is that if you're lucky, you grow up in a family with an adequate amount of financial health to get all of your needs met. You live in a country that also supports you in meeting all of your needs. And you grow up in a family that also supports your emotional needs. So you're not being like traumatized by narcissistic behavior and abuse. So if you're lucky, you get all of those things, and then you live in an elevated box compared to everyone else. You don't have to graduate school with student debt. You don't graduate with depression and anxiety because you weren't traumatized from a young age. You can go get a job and feel good about moving through the world because you were raised as like a confident human being, but you won the life lottery. That's what it was. So if you didn't win the life lottery, you might live in like actual cages like people are doing in El Salvador. I mean, I don't actually know if they're literal cages, but it's a prison, so it's essentially it essentially is a cage. You could be some unfortunate person in the United States sent to El Salvador right now, or you could be living in the cage of doing DoorDash and Uber Eats, which is currently trying to like buy the New York mayoral election, which is completely undemocratic and completely corrupted. It's all about the life lottery, luck, depending on what cage that you're born into. Some people have cages which are way more tolerable than others, and some people are born in cages which are cobalt mines, into war and death and destruction. And the people who are living in the slightly better cages, they benefit from everyone in the worst cages. And because their conditions are better than others, even though they are far from perfect, they're better than others. And that's why they're not fighting against the system, because they either can't imagine that things could be better than they already are, or they just don't see how it benefits them. Like, they don't have enough compassion to fight for other people, it's too much work, it's too much friction, whatever. And yet their conditions are good enough to not do anything, which I think is completely delusional, because things are getting worse for a lot of us. Like seeing your neighbors get abducted, seeing people lose their jobs left and right. I have a friend in medical school right now. She is a resident, and she is doing the workload of doctors and nurses and being a student all at once. And people are, because of all the new visa restrictions, her specific school, which has a lot of international residents, they're severely understaffed now because of racism and xenophobia and all these other things. I just want people who are in the prettier boxes and the better boxes to get a grip. But I can't make them get a grip. And the people who might have that trait of ignorance, I don't know if there is any amount of pleading which will make them get a check on reality. Because it feels like you're screaming into a wall sometimes, and they just don't do anything about it. And I just, like, literally, are they incapable of feeling, I don't know what it is, like love more? Because ultimately that's what it boils down to. I love the planet and I love the people on it. I want to keep them alive and healthy and happy. So we live in cages, we live in boxes, and people should be more engaged about making the world a better place. Yeah. You're not gonna be perfect, but doing something is better than nothing. And please, for the love of God, read history books. Read books about indigenous people, brown people, black people, people from the 1100s, from the 1600s. Learn about the variety of human life, because this is not the only way for humans to exist. It absolutely is not.